Nearly every civilization remembers a flood, the last echo of a forgotten world, transmitted in history as myth, legend, or religious creation. But that's the problem. Nearly, but not all of them, and you are going to be shocked to find out who they are. But first, let's review the theory.
The Fuku Files!
It all starts in the Bible when God tells Noah to build an ark because he's going to kill everybody. Once all taken care of, Noah is to repopulate Earth. The theory goes that all ancient civilizations have this myth of destruction. Here is what Graham Hancock has to say about it.
And that all these things are probably tales of stories that people pass down from generation to generation that survive this time.
Yeah, because we now know that at that time, between 12,800 and 11,600 years ago, truly global cataclysmic events involving rapid rises in sea level did occur. And suddenly the worldwide tradition of a global flood stops being just a myth and starts being a memory.
Then Graham Hancock mixes the flood with advanced civilizations destroyed by it, stating that a few who escaped spread knowledge to tribes in upper lands that went unaffected by it to renew civilization.
As the Younger Dryas begins 12,800 years ago with a cataclysm, with a puzzling, mysterious rise in sea level at the same point, 1,000 years of freezing temperatures, mass extinctions of animal species all over the world, and then 11,600 years ago, global temperature shoots up, the last of the ice caps collapse into the sea level rises enormously. That is the date that work starts at Göbekli Tepe, and it's a point I've made many times, but it's really worth making because archaeologists roll their eyes every time you say the word Atlantis. But that is precisely the date that Plato, which is the earliest surviving reference to Atlantis, that's precisely the date he gives for the destruction of Atlantis. The date of what is called meltwater pulse 1b, one of the biggest single rises overnight in sea level that ever occurred. So if Plato made it up, it's really weird that he picked a date that is precisely a date that coincides with the latest geological evidence on cataclysmic sea level rise at the end of the Ice Age.
Let's unpack this. Yes, the melting of glaciers raised the sea levels and at its maximum rise, which is called melting water P1A, not 1B. The sea rose 20 meters in 300 years. A rise unnoticeable in a human lifespan. What Graham Hancock omits from Joe Rogan and the public is that Plato, in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, described the island of Atlantis as a once advanced island civilization that waged war on ancient Athens and its allies but was defeated. After the war, the gods punished the Atlanteans with a catastrophic earthquake and flood, sinking their land into the sea in a single day and night, implying that Athens was more advanced and had more powerful gods, a threat to others that wanted to wage war against his beloved city. And it is not a historical book, it's a metaphor used by Plato to exemplify the decline Athens has suffered from a perfect past of power and superiority. You are watching an animation of the rise of sea levels at the end of the Younger Dryas, and how the coastal lines receded. The end of Younger Dryas is marked by 2,500 years of rising sea levels. That's 1.8 inches a year at its peak speed, 0.02 inch at its slowest rate. Current sea levels are rising at rate of 0.17 inches a year. Basically, you are living through a rise in sea level on par with the Younger Dryas. We can safely assume that the end of the Younger Dryas was not the cause of the floods in most of the great civilizations' religious myths. So what could cause it, and what's the clue to get to the culprit? First, let's establish that the only time humans almost went extinct we weren't humans. It happened to Homo erectus 900,000 years ago, and we know this through genetics. Historical population sizes can be inferred from genetic data using coalescent theory and algorithms like the sequentially Markovian coalescent SMC and SMC++. By analyzing patterns of genetic variation, such as identity by descent segments. Onto the flood. The myth is real, and it is present in most civilizations, except it is not present in the Egyptian and Nubian civilization. And it's that detail that gives us the clue we need. The biblical account of Noah is just an adaptation from the Sumerian myth of Gilgamesh, word by word. The Sumerian Empire was born alongside the river Euphrates and Tigris, rivers who flooded the empire more than once. Same for the Akkadians, the Assyrians, and the Babylonians. Same happened to the Chinese, the Hindu, and basically all the great civilizations as they were established along rivers. Then there was the Nile, with a unique feature among rivers. The Nile floods are seasonal, predictable, and benign. They don't destroy. They fertilize the fields and make agriculture possible in Egypt, and what used to be the Nubian Empire. The only Egyptian myth remotely linked to a flood is the legend of god Ra sending the fierce goddess Hathor as the Eye of Ra to punish disobedient humans. She goes on a rampage, slaughtering many, but Ra stops her by flooding the fields with red-dyed beer, which she mistakes for blood and drinks, becoming drunk and ceasing her destruction. This story explains the origin of the annual Nile flood, which Egyptians viewed as beneficial for agriculture, and was a festival in their culture. It is ironical that Graham Hancock's theory of a flood, causing a transfer of technology to explain the Egyptian civilization and its pyramids, relies in the one civilization that does not, has a myth of a destructive flood. On the contrary, floods of the Nile were viewed as salvation by the Egyptians. The Egyptians were a much older empire than the Sumerians, and much more secluded. On the other hand, the cultural influence of the Sumerians go all the way to the Roman Empire and the Judeo-Christian Bible, as they all have adopted the epics of Gilgamesh as a blueprint for the punishment of God by a flood, most probable the flood of the river alongside where they placed their cities. Sadly, Graham Hancock cherry-picks data to support his story, mainly because his story would be destroyed by the data. Archaeology is a hard science and has to conform its findings with all the findings of other branches of science, like genetics, geology, and biology. Hancock is a charlatan at best, entertainment at worst. We forget that the people that built these monuments were equal to us. They had the same brain that now creates computers, AI, satellites, atomic bombs, gravitational wave detectors, particle colliders. They had the same mind but less resources, and again our own innovation and resourcefulness surprises us as we manage to build amazing things with only rope, levers, water, and copper.